Welcome to the Comics Experiment, the show that we produce right here at Comicstorian, where I sit with my two cohorts, Andy and Dan, and discuss things that are hot topic button items in the comic book world, or what's happening in recent comic books, or that kind of a thing. You can watch it live on Saturday morning at the Comicstorian channel, also on iTunes, Spotify, and Google Music. You can also find it live over at twitch.tv/Comicstorian on Thursdays at about 2 p.m. Eastern. And you can get early access unedited over at our Patreon, patreon.com/Comicstorian. That goes live about Fridays. Today's episode is going to be about the topic, is the comic book industry dying due to trade paperbacks? And it's also brought to you by 4 Hymns, where you can get amazing hair, skin, and sexual wellness. And I'll tell you more about that in the middle of today's episode. But it is also brought to you by Mint Mobile, which is an amazing cell phone company, which we discovered is owned by Ryan Reynolds. So we'll do anything for you, Mr. Reynolds.
Anything.
But Mint Mobile is a great way to get a cheap phone plan, and I'll also tell you about that in the middle of today's episode. And once again, seriously, Mr. Reynolds, anything.
Just tweet at me and I will die. Literally.
He'll explode.
I would just explode.
So anyway.
Death by Ryan Reynolds.
Death
by tweet would be on my...
So this is... Awkward silence. All right, so anyway, this is our Christmas episode, guys. We will be gone for the next week at least. Of
Holiday episode.
But we wanted to talk about a really big topic, and it's going to just have multiple hats? Is that the plan here?
Yep.
How many Christmas hats can Andy get on his head?
A bunch. Got a big head.
Your head is going to get so hot.
It is.
Because one of them is very hot. That's why I took it off.
I know.
That's what you get when you go to the dollar store to get your Christmas hats.
Yeah, the Christmas hats don't breathe. That's the problem.
Anyway, guys, the big issue I want to talk about today is trade sitting, because 3 stories that we are going to talk about in length today ended, and if it was quite obviously written as a trade paperback, which makes it a great story, but is that hurting the industry? Because we've heard about that for a while. So I want to explain trade sitting real quick for anybody who's new in the comic book world. Comic books are released as what is referred to as floppies. That is your single issues that come out every 2 weeks or every 4 weeks, or every 3 months if you're Doomsday Clock.
I thought that was like a little square you put in your computer.
It is, but people refer to them as floppies in the comic book world.
Okay.
So, or every 3 months if you're Doomsday Clock, right?
It's not even 3 months. It's like every 4 decades.
Andy keeps making the release, like, according to Andy, Doomsday Clock started once Watchmen ended.
No, it was
Actually started before it even started.
Superman debuted in 1938. In 1939, the first issue of Doomsday Clock came out. We just finished it.
But anyway, so that is referred to as floppies. Because of the nature of comic books being 22 pages to 48 pages, depending on what you're getting. The cost of them being that is $3 to $5 to $8. Some people don't pick them up on a weekly or every other week basis. Also due to the fact that there's like 40-something comics on most weeks.
Yeah.
Those people are known as a practice known as trade sitting. They're following the release of a comic book, and they wait until it comes out into the book, and they buy the book version.
Right.
Which is not a terrible way to read comics. We're not here to say that that's not how you should be reading them. Matter of fact, that is the counter. Don't give me that look, okay? I got a lot of gas in me right now. It's all escaping while I'm a blowhard talking about myself. It's not a terrible way to read comic books. Trade sitting is not a terrible thing, but the question is, does it harm the industry? And because people are known to trade sit, are writers adapting stories to make them more functional in a trade sitting situation? For those who don't know, the comic book industry bases the sales of a comic book on the pre-orders of a comic book, not on the trades, which is what we want to talk about this today. So generally, what happens is they announce, let's say, Batman is going to kill the DC universe. Honestly wondering why DC's never made that.
Oh my gosh, I would read that.
It's called Tower of Babel, but let's just have him kill everyone.
That's exactly what that is.
But let's say DC's going to release
that.
They're going to release Batman defeats the DC universe.
Okay.
They would announce it, and you'd have like between the time frame of 2 months to 6 months, depending how big of an event they want to make it, to pre-order this book. People don't even know pre-ordering comic books is a thing. Okay?
Yeah, a lot of don't.
They'll base that on how many prints they're going to have of an individual comic book. 1, 2, 3 prints of it. The comic then comes out, and you're given the option to pre-order the next book, and so forth and so on, and they keep going. And if the pre-orders are low, followed by low sales, which is their 2 metrics, the comic gets canceled. That's the problem, though, because sometimes, let's say you have a 6-issue miniseries, such as Gwenpool Strikes Back, which is what we're going to talk about today, where the story is great, but because it did some things in the middle of the book, which was intended to give you one heck of an incredible ending, you don't know that. And therefore, you stop pre-ordering in the middle of the book, sales go down, book gets canceled, book completes, now everyone's raving about it, but the writer, the artist, everyone's moved on because the book got canceled because pre-orders were low. So I think you have to understand how the comic book industry works to understand why we're saying are comic books traditionally dying? Are floppies dying? And I think Black Label is a great example of them trying something new, moving into more of a book format, and things like that. But I have talked for 6 minutes of our podcast so far. Dan, go.
All right, so I think the trade waiting or trade sitting is it's killing the comic book industry. Not for books like Gwenpool, like Doomsday Clock, like potentially Batman, stuff like that. I don't think those are going to die out completely. It's the indie companies that it's ruining. And it's ruining it for people that are trying to get into comics. Because if you were like, oh, I want to get into the current Batman or the current Gwenpool, and they read one of the middle ones and they're like, wait, I don't like this.
Right.
They're not going to keep reading. But if it's an indie company, they don't have the money and privilege essentially to afford to make a full trade, put that out, because if that doesn't sell well, that indie company just lost a lot of money. Right. Whereas DC and Marvel have a little bit more to work with, that it doesn't hurt them as much. It does hurt them because, Gwenpool, I'm sure, was very much on the fence, as we've seen from the fact that it's come out multiple times, then got canceled, and then came back another time, and then got canceled, and then came back again.
It's because everyone raves about Gwenpool once it's done.
Exactly.
Like, it gets to the point where it's getting canceled, then they rave about it because they're buying the trades.
And by the time that they've done that, like you said, the writer's now working on another book, so that they can't go back and continue the Gwenpool, and now you get in the situation of, okay, well, is the next writer going to write a good enough story that it's going to sell well enough to keep Gwenpool around again, or is it going to be the same rotating situation?
What is your thoughts on the general topic before we kind of go on deep dive into more nitty gritties of it?
Yeah.
So generally speaking, I trade sit.
Like I said, and honestly, I want to clarify, I don't even consider that a bad practice because the industry has created a situation where you're going to want to trade sit. They have. So the question is that killing the originals? Because
honestly, so for me nowadays, when we do our review show, generally speaking, we purchase them for work, obviously.
Yeah.
So when it comes to my own personal purchases, I don't buy 45 issues of 45 comics a week.
I think you average like 5 or 6, don't you? If even that.
Most weeks it's like 2 to 3.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's my personal collection is like 4
now,
to 5.
There are certain books I like to follow, and I do like to. I don't know what you want to call it there. Reward the writers, I guess. If I like a book, I will purchase it. Support. Thank you.
Reward.
I was like, I don't know what you want to call it.
Congratulations.
I bought your word.
I read a lot of sword and sorcery books, a lot of indie books and things like that. And sort of the same idea. I know if I don't purchase them, then odds are good they're not going to continue.
Yeah.
However, there are other books that I'm like, well, this could be a cool story, but I don't really want to spend my money on it. I'll probably get it in trade. That's
right.
I do that for a lot of things too. So I guess I'm kind of on both.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Because, I do want to say, I'm not necessarily opposed to trade sitting, but I do think it's damaging the smaller comic book people, the smaller industries or
you're not wrong.
companies.
Let me clarify exactly what Dan's talking about. So if you're going to trade sit on Batman, Batman's never getting canceled.
Yeah, I was going to say it's not really going to affect anything.
Right. If you're like, oh, Tom King's done. Let me go buy 85 volumes or whatever Tom King's run. That's not going to kill the book. The book went 85 issues. But if you're trade sitting on, a great example, I'll give a great indie book, What's that one by Scott Snyder?
I've got the best one. What was that one?
Undiscovered Country.
I'm going to give you a great example. I just don't know the title.
Undiscovered Country,
which I have purchased the first 2 issues.
I have too. Brand new.
Yes.
Brand new book. Now, you're not going to want to pre-order that. And now what's going to happen to the book?
Yeah.
Is it going to keep going or not?
But see, you might want to pre-order it because you know Scott Snyder. That's
Right.
also what I do. I follow writers.
Exactly, but like new writers,
Yeah, exactly.
it's very
Yeah,
hard
if I
to
don't
get
know
in
the
the
writer,
industry.
yeah, I'd have to like look at the book
Exactly,
first,
and it's like, well, if Scott Snyder had not written anything and just started today,
Right.
we
That would
know
be harder, yeah.
Exactly, it would be very hard for him to get in because most likely he would have to start in an indie company, and then hopefully people would buy his book and enjoy that specific book, and like he would have to grow. And in this current day and age, there are so many comics as well.
Yeah.
That very often you're like, I've got the money, I trust this writer.
Right, yeah. I mean, which is generally what I do.
Yeah.
If I see it, right? Like Scott Snyder, they're like, oh, a new indie book by Scott Snyder about a closed off America, whatever it is, 100 years in the future,
Yeah.
where whatever. I was
Right.
like, all right, I'm sold. You got me.
Right, right. And you
Yeah,
can go
yeah,
off the
yeah.
pitches,
Yeah,
but you're right.
exactly.
Like a lot of times with the indie books, I don't go to them unless something really hooks me. Artwork or story that I'm hearing about or writer.
Exactly, and that's another one is it's like some of these people you read the comic because you know the writing's going to be good, whereas if you don't recognize the author and you don't know if it's going to be good and the art just happens to be bad,
Right,
that
yeah,
also
that might
kind of
turn you
ruins
off,
them
yeah.
because then you go, well, I don't like this art, I'm going to skip this
Right.
one, and then the writer loses the chance, and because
Right.
there's so many factors to it of the hump to get into the industry is so high,
Right, yeah.
and it's so much trying to just keep the people that are still in it that if you're not able to attract new people or expand the industry as a whole, it's going to die. It's
Yeah.
going to dwindle down.
Well-
People are going to fall off, and not many people are going to jump back on. And then you just slowly do 2 steps forward, 1 step back kind of thing.
Well, is the industry adapting to getting away from floppies because of things like digital releases? Injustice is a huge seller on digital, then went floppy, then went trade, and they just triple dipped into it. They did. They
No,
went
they
3
definitely
times
did.
within that whole thing. But another example is The Unbeatable Squirrel Girl. Now, that is notoriously a book not made for your general comic book fan.
Yep.
Notoriously a book that was panned by old Squirrel Girl fans. For the record, side note, who are those old Squirrel Girl fans?
Squirrel Girl fans from the 70s.
I always, when they came out, they're like, they ruined Squirrel Girl. And I'm like,
I like classic Squirrel Girl where she was fighting in World War II.
I was like, when was Squirrel Girl a thing? I always thought of Squirrel Girl as like a LOL meme character. I'm Squirrel Girl.
For the record, I would read that.
Right?
Squirrel Girl in World
fighting
War II.
Yeah. She's got to put together her own all-star squadron.
Of squirrels.
There's a
I'm
bunch of squirrels with
Little helmets.
I would read the hell out of that book.
But what I'm saying, like, I always found that funny when they were talking, like, oh, they ruined Squirrel Girl. And I'm like, so? She's not like she was like an Avenger that was top tier.
She beat Thanos.
This is true.
Anyway, small little rant about the Squirrel Girl changes. It was notorious that it didn't sell well as a floppy because the floppies traditionally cater to your more traditional comic book fan. But the trades sold amazing in the kids book areas.
Okay.
To the point where they kept the issues going until what? It was issue 50 it finally got canceled? Because we just did that on Absolute.
Something like that.
I don't even think it got canceled. I got a feeling the writer and the artist just wanted to move on.
I think so. I think it was more of a pause
Yeah.
than a cancel. Because they even say, like, because he gives Squirrel Girl the ability to breathe in space, and he's like, this could stay, this could go. We don't know yet.
But so, like, if the fact that Marvel continued the book, even though it notoriously sold poorly as a floppy, but sold amazing as a trade, does that mean that they are now starting to kind of recognize this problem? Are they recognizing these issues?
Yeah.
I would think you would need to, like, especially with Marvel, because they get their trades out really quick. Usually
Yeah.
it's like the next month or something like that. DC
Very, very
takes a
soon.
little while to get their trades out, unfortunately. But I would think you would
Sometimes.
Except
DC's
the
came out
black
like 3
labels.
days.
Sometimes, yeah, that is true.
I
Sometimes
feel like
they're quick about
the
it.
black labels tend
Are a little
to
bit
get
quicker,
into
yeah. But I would say, you have to take trades. Why wouldn't you take trades into account for sales?
But they weren't. That was the problem
I know,
with the industry.
but to me, that's what doesn't make any sense. To me, you should look at sales of a series in all of its formats. Is it doing well in digital? Is it doing well in physical? Are the trades selling really well even though the physical aren't? Okay, is there something wrong with the writing style then? Like, I don't know why you wouldn't look at it all encompassing.
See, my assumption is, and this is
the
based
character's
on what we know.
action figure selling well? That's a big one.
The problem with
It is actually.
Right.
It's a really big
It's
one.
a huge deal. The
How
problem
can we market this with t-shirts?
He's not wrong, actually. A lot of people don't realize this, but books that are selling well but have a crazy amount, selling poorly but have crazy merchandising.
Yes, they will stay
They
on.
will stay because
there.
they just
Yeah.
want to have the character. Batman got a new suit and 9 toys.
I was gonna say, if a character has merchandising appeal, that character will not go away.
Yeah.
Why do you think this is? I mean, female Thor, Jane Foster Thor, stayed around as long as she did because one, Jason Aaron wanted to write her, but two, did you ever pay attention to how much merchandising came out of Jane Foster Thor?
so much.
Yeah. Like, that's another thing. Just like Gwenpool. When Gwenpool was having its ups and downs, she stuck around because, we can make a pink-looking female Deadpool character. You know what I mean? Like,
Statues and Funko Pops and action figures and t-shirts and
she's literally 2 spots on her
we got
shelf.
boxes.
Your head's blocking the cool
Wait,
one.
wait.
Hey, bring her down. Put her right there for a minute. Put her on the desk. Why don't we have superpowers?
There we go.
You needed
That
that
was
stretch.
sad to watch, by the way.
And then I mean, our chat's bringing it up, but Silk has statues and stuff. Because she was very popular, just not in America. I mean, well, she's a Korean American character, so like she definitely does well. That's why she's on the Korean American team right now.
Yeah.
It's interesting because all we ever hear about is a book got canceled because the floppies didn't do well. But we do know that they track toys. In trades, I think they track once they get beyond and the trades are coming out and the book's still going. The issues we run into is when a story goes 6 issues in and they cancel it because it's not doing well.
Right.
But the trade ends up doing super well, but you can't consider that now.
Right,
'Cause the
right.
book's done.
Plus, I feel the problem with trying to take trades into account is the money investment to produce the trade. Like paying the writers, the artists, the ink guy, the colorists, like all those people for a full trade probably costs a lot of money, and you don't know if that's going to sell well until it's out. And if it doesn't, if you didn't have money to begin with, you're now completely screwed. It's just like with movies, or it's very similar to movies, how we often see, oh, this movie had a $600 million budget, but it only made $5 million in box office.
Right.
Now that the company that made that is out of business because they have no money.
Right. Yeah.
And the problem is, like, Unbeatable Squirrel Girl, Marvel does have that capacity, whereas I'm going to use trying to think of a very, very small one. We'll say Dark Horse. It's not as small, but like if Dark Horse came out with one and they invested all of it into the trade, one, they don't have recognizable characters enough to sell people just on that. Like there's so many different factors that unless they had a huge writer, they might not even get people to give it a shot, because there are also so many comics out right now that a lot of people have to decide which ones they want to go to, and more people are willing to stick with what they know than to try something new.
Well, that brings me to
just
one of the
such a
topics I was
big-
going to bring up. Tom King was crazy divisive. Like, to the point where fans were like, oh, I dropped it. But its sales stayed up.
Yeah.
So a lot of people just stayed with what they knew and just complained about it.
Well, I've had friends who are like that, because I had a buddy of mine in the Army who literally spent like $200 something a month on comics.
Okay.
Right. And he'd be like, yeah, most of them I just put them in the drawer and I don't even read them. And I'm like, well, why are you getting them? Well, I don't really like the story they're doing. Well, why are you still buying it? Because I like the character.
Exactly.
Like, but you're not reading the comic because you don't like the story.
Right.
But I like the character. I don't want to cancel the book.
But
it's not.
But he
it's
understands
not-
the industry.
Yeah.
Exactly. And it's like with Batman and those popular characters, a lot of the time, even if you don't like the story, sometimes you buy the next book regardless, because you have the thought of, maybe it'll get better.
Yeah.
Like the Tom King, often, like some of them, you're like, well, maybe he'll fix it in the next issue. Maybe, and
I mean,
we went a
you stuck it
long
around for a
period
while.
of
Spoiler
time.
alert. He didn't.
For the record, I still overall liked it. Just the ending. I wasn't a fan of the ending. That's all. We'll talk about that in a minute, though. But
I like you're saying it like Tom King is currently
just
watching.
in case you're watching, Mr. King. We got Mr.
Tom.
King. We got Mr. Reynolds. We got
Tommy boy.
Tommy boy. The hell?
And you know, speaking of Mr. Reynolds, I think Mr. Reynolds has a phone call from you. For you. What's the company from?
Hello, Mint Mobile.
Today's podcast is sponsored by Mint Mobile. Are you tired of big wireless taking advantage of everyone? Want to save money on your monthly wireless bill without sacrificing quality? Well, Mint Mobile is the perfect product for you. Mint Mobile provides the same premium network coverage that you're used to, but at a fraction of the cost. Mint Mobile can even cut your monthly wireless bill down to just $15 a month. And yes, that includes unlimited nationwide talk and text. Choose data plans between 3, 8, and 12 gigs of 4G LTE data. With Mint Mobile, you can keep your own phone and phone number. Just pop in that SIM card and you're good to go. To get your wireless plan for just $15 a month and get the plan shipped to your door for free, go to mintmobile.com/RobinBenny. That's mintmobile.com/RobinBenny. Cut your wireless bill to $15 a month at mintmobile.com/RobinBenny.
What was the noise?
Trying something new.
I didn't like it.
No?
Don't do it again. Don't do it again. No, that was awful. No.
Don't do the sound effects.
Don't do the sound effects. That's what I meant, just so we're clear. Not Mint Mobile. The sound effects Benny decided to put on that one.
Yeah,
Not good.
luckily the product's good enough.
Yeah,
to
exactly.
Make
Maybe
up for
drone
that.
out his horrible noises.
I like even our chat. The portal is apt.
Yeah, what the hell, man? That was not good.
So anyway, this brings me. So I think we've kind of. I feel like our first 15 minutes of our discussion hit the points we're talking about, but I feel like we were a little all over the place. So I want to bring this in by giving us more of a general topic. So, did you end up finishing the Gwenpool run? Told you to read it. I don't know if you actually.
No,
read it.
I didn't actually read it.
Okay, you
No,
cool?
yeah.
We spoil it
That's
for you.
fine.
Honestly, I didn't care if you said yes because.
Because we spooling it, fool.
You spooling it?
Yeah.
So, Gwenpool, I think, is a great example because it just ended yesterday. Gwenpool notoriously is one of those characters that came out as a wacky LOL meme character, then got turned into a character that a lot of fan favorites like. She's heartwarming, she's touching,
this one.
people enjoyed her story, what ended up happening with her. She did a great job of breaking the fourth wall, but also analyzing it, as opposed to Deadpool going, fourth wall joke! You know, she would analyze what's happening. When the new run came out, it started out pretty strong. And it was like LOL.
We're
meme,
hold on.
but
Are we
she-
talking the one that was in
Strikes Back.
Howard the Duck?
No. We're
The
talking-
most recent one.
Most recent.
Okay.
Started out pretty strong. She seemed to be a little bit more jokey. Most of his fans of Gwenpool just looked at it as, well, they're just trying to work a little more Deadpool into the style.
The first one definitely started as really, really fourth wall breaking in this series compared to her previous ones.
Right. And then what ended up happening was the book on issue 2, she started to break the fourth wall further and further as things were going to the point where it was like she's turned into Deadpool, and she would comment that she's turned into Deadpool.
And then Deadpool showed up
To comment on
on the fact that she turned into Deadpool.
To the point where issue 4, she had created an island, had everybody battling against each other, and none of that made sense to the character of Gwenpool.
Yeah.
And most of us, while reading the book, assumed that the writer didn't get the character. And we were like, well, and I was the one who was always arguing, you need to look at each iteration of a character as an individual iteration. So Christopher Hastings' original iteration is done, and that version that we liked is done. This is the new version.
Yeah.
So you either enjoy or you disenjoy it, but you can't hold the writer of that one, Leah Williams. You can't hold her accountable to what Christopher Hastings did. It's a different version of the character. Was my point because she's gonna write Gwenpool as she wants. Well, as it turns out, in issue 5, her going down this crazy path was all intentional.
Yeah.
For the final message of Miss Marvel approaching her and stating, Gwen, what is wrong with you? You're being a manic. This is crazy beyond what you normally do. And her finally breaking down because it's all been anxiety and stress driven because she didn't want to get canceled. So she was trying to do what people wanted the whole time, which was exactly the point of the book. But you wouldn't know that unless you got to issue 5.
Yeah, and personally, I will say, if I was reading this without being in this job, probably would have stopped at issue 2 or 3.
Yeah, because she was a different version.
It was a different version, and it was so over the top for the last issue, but I didn't know that yet.
Right.
And if I was on a budget, I wouldn't have put money into that when I preferred these other stories.
Right, and so it ends up boiling down to she finally breaks down, finally realizes what she's doing, and they eventually give her a proper origin, and they give her, a Marvel origin, but she maintains her original stuff. They put her into one of the Marvel families, because if you don't know, Marvel treats them as the mutants, the Avengers, Spider-Man. I'm looking at you.
Like he's a
Fantastic Four.
Spider-Man just by himself. Like
And humans are over
They
there.
consider them family of books. It's a family of books, you know?
Right.
Like Deadpool's technically an X-Men book. So it
I don't
falls
know.
under-
I don't know what he's doing anymore.
Apparently, families are
he's
circles.
like, it's a family of books, guys.
It doesn't shape like a family or like a book,
Or
but
like a
it's
book.
What is a family shape like?
I don't know. At least like people,
yeah.
but not a
Bunch
circle.
of stick figures in a car.
Yeah.
Oh, I've seen those.
Yeah.
I've seen the one where they get the little dog stick figures
Yeah,
too.
there you go.
So anyway,
And there's that one lady with nothing but cats.
cat lady. But what it gets to is it boils down to it was the entire purpose of the story. So obviously, when Leah wrote this storyline, it was intended to give you that impact on the finale. It was intended for you to purposely be like, "Oh my God, what are they doing? What are you doing, Gwen? Oh no, now you're teaming up with other Gwens. What is going on?" Oh, you know, like that's just.
I imagine that's how Ben was when he was reading it too. With the, oh my, I just,
Shedding a single tear.
Well, no, and you get a little teary-eyed, just like the last of that Gwenpool, because she talks about it, goes into it. I do love the little joke about Wolverine. So basically,
Which one?
With the Gwenpool, where it boils down to they decide that Gwenpool's a mutant
Yep.
as far as Marvel's concerned.
Sure.
But
That's-
she knows she's not, which I kind of liked.
Yeah.
I didn't want it to like fully change because I liked her as a human being in the comic world.
Right, and I did too. But they go down to she is a mutant as far as Marvel's concerned.
Right.
Basically along the lines of Franklin Richards. So
Okay,
she has a place.
Yeah.
And they say you have reality warping powers and you're basically like these other mutants and things like that. And Wolverine, so she ends up going to Krakoa and like she's crying and Wolverine's like, "It's okay. It's okay." And then she starts like blabbering about how I'm at home and I'm a mutant and I'm not this and blah, blah, blah. And he's like, "Jane, this one's gone crazy."
We need a telepath. She's like, no telepaths. Quentin's right there and he's like, after me, I can't blame you.
So it gives like a great wrap up to the whole thing. But once again, do you feel that that story was ruined by aiming for that 5th issue? Or because you knew it was limited, you knew that that was where it was going to go? And I wanted to ask you because you haven't read it. So knowing that there is a conclusion to this,
Right.
there's a purpose to this.
I would say
While
no-
also knowing my reactions from weekly basis is, since we do a Comicstorian Weekly, a review channel for old comic books every Monday.
Oh,
two of us.
It's us. It's
yeah,
not
yeah,
him.
not
He's-
him. Ugh. It's us.
We just steal his
do
name.
Fusion dance? Do the fusion thing.
That's insanely difficult for the
Yeah,
record.
it is really difficult to do. I would say no, it doesn't ruin it, and this is why. That's right. I have an argument. Every story is written for the ending.
Okay.
That is the point of a story.
Yes and no.
The point of the story is to get from A to B. Now, obviously, a lot of people make the argument, and I also generally make this argument. It is the journey, not the ending or the destination. That it's supposed to be the point of the story. But whether you bought it in a trade or you bought it as a single issue, the payoff would have been at the end. You know what I'm saying? Now, if it was an ongoing series and not just a 5-issue miniseries, yes, you would have to look at each individual issue.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? But even in an ongoing series, they're broken up into story arcs. So the point of the story arc would be whatever the ending of the story arc is to get you to the next one. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So
But
if
would
you
you
had,
have potentially
if you had
trade
bought,
set?
well,
For the Gwenpool.
if you didn't enjoy the first 2 issues, why would you trade sit for it?
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? If you already like the character, you like Gwenpool, right?
I do.
And you might buy it.
Yep.
Let's say you bought the first 2 issues and you're like, you know what? Not really feeling it. You're not then going to buy the trade.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? If you were going to wait anyway, you're just going to buy the trade. So, you know what I'm saying? Like,
Right.
regardless.
But-
so the point of that was the ending, though.
Right.
So whether you bought it, let's say you bought the trade and you got like 2 issues in the trade and you're like, honestly, I don't even really want to keep reading this. I know I already spent $10 or whatever.
Right.
But I don't even, like, I'm not enjoying it. I'll just put it on the shelf, whatever, or I'll give it to a buddy or whatever like that. You know what I'm saying? So regardless, whether you were trade sitting or you were buying the individual issues, the point would have been the ending because that was the point of
Right.
that particular story.
But it's also with that one, because the number of pre-orders and stuff like that of the singles for a character that the story is literally about it being canceled or potentially being canceled because of the sales. She even says that specifically in the book.
Yep.
We're not selling well. I could get canceled.
Right.
That brings up the issue of, like, if you're not supporting it until the trade, how do you know you would get more even if it was great?
But it was already a mini series. Is the thing.
Well, but see
Okay,
that.
so then let's
well,
say-
I was
no,
going
no,
to say, if
but
it's
here's the
already
thing.
a miniseries, you're like, okay, it's going to tell its story within 5
Right.
issues, and we'll call it good. So whether I wait for a trade or not, it doesn't matter because I already know it's going to be 5 issues.
I
think-
see his point is that story is set up to have an ending.
While true, I do want to say Gwenpool is a little bit of a special situation because it was a mini series because it was going to get canceled. That was very
But
well
that was
known.
exactly. That was the point of it. Now, let's say.
So if you don't pre-order it, you're pretty much guaranteeing it's going to get canceled, regardless of if you like the trade.
But it's already a mini series, is my
Right.
point. Now,
This-
if they were just like, if they were like, listen, we got Curse of the White Knight. Okay, Curse of the White Knight's going to be whatever it is, 10 issues, 8
Yeah.
issues, whatever. They're like, it's going to be 8 issues. That's it. So regardless of whether I wait to buy it for trade, because I'm like, oh, well, I'll get it for trade. It'll be great. I'll read it all in one shot. I don't have to wait month
You're
to
going
month.
to get to the ending no matter
I'm
what.
going to get to the ending no matter what because it's 8 issues.
Right, so when Gwenpool came out and it was 5 issues, they're
Regardless
setting it up
of
to
whether
be
you
like-
waited
so
or
we
not,
need
it's
a
gonna be
better
fine.
example. Gwenpool's
Okay,
a bad
well,
example.
okay, so I'll say if Gwenpool was an indie one and you did that and they got to issue 3 and people were trade sitting and they no longer had the money to afford that writer and all those people for the comic, that they had to cancel in the middle because they're an indie company. Like, that's the situation that I think is
I have a better example.
hurting
Hold on.
the industry.
I have an example of a book that was an ongoing and then got canceled because people weren't pre-ordering it.
Okay.
Superior
Most
Spider-Man.
of the new 52.
Superior Spider-Man was a recent book. People
Mm-hmm.
were following it. It was a revisit of Otto. We were going to go down a whole new path for him.
Yeah,
a
I
whole
got
new
it. So
story.
what, like 12 issues?
Got the 12 issues,
something like that,
and
yeah.
it was quite obviously ending by like 11.
Yeah.
And it was
Yes,
wrapping up
very
and it
much,
was
yeah,
done.
yeah, yeah.
But the way the story was being told, it was not intended to be that way. And we had no
Yeah.
word that this was a limited series or a mini
Right, they
series.
didn't say like, all right, we're doing 12 issues.
Right.
That's it.
So if it was intended to be that way, no one knew.
right, which is possible though that is how they intended it.
Right, but
Right.
that's a better example because, at least as far as I knew, it wasn't a limited run.
Right.
It was not.
Yeah.
Right.
I remembered looking into it. It was not. It was supposed to be an ongoing series,
Right.
but
Yeah.
not enough people got the singles, and
Well,
it
exactly.
just
That's a
died
better
down
example,
because
the
of
problem
that.
with the Gwenpool example is no matter whether or not you put it or not, he's right. It's just like Curse of the White Knight. It was going to end at 5.
That's fair.
No one could have gotten it,
Mm-hmm.
and they would have just finished it.
And then be like, okay, well, here's the trade. Hopefully it sells better.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah, that's exactly what they would have done.
Yeah.
But Superior was supposed to be an ongoing as far as we're all tracking.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one that got
Or
canceled.
heck, unbelievable. Gwenpool's technically in that situation. Now
Unbelievable.
I think about it.
Yeah, it was going in one direction. And
It was
they-
supposed to be an actual series, not a mini series, but because of the pre-sales,
yeah,
it got canceled.
It started dying off, and then everyone freaked out about it in post when it was in trade. So then basically it was Superior is the issue because it could have kept going if people had been pre-ordering and things like that. I don't know how trade sales went. Maybe they waited for the first trade that came out, and that also didn't do well.
Right.
So they were just like, and we're done.
Yeah, yeah.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, you got 6 issues to finish. Do that. So
Because I do want to actually tag on to that of the, if it didn't sell well during that period of time, then they're like, okay, we have to fully conclude this. They get to that conclusion. Otto, in this case, reverts back to his original Otto-ness. And then people start enjoying it after the trade, and they're like, well, crap, we can't continue this. We've just wrapped it up.
Right.
Now-
Like, that's the other problem with the not supporting those ongoing ones. Apparently,
this is an example, a good example also
Okay.
of a pre-orders tanking a book before it even gets a shot.
okay.
Back in 2017, and we don't know if there's more to the story, but the assumption was that it did poor pre-sale sales.
Mm-hmm.
Pre-sale.
Pre-sales.
Pre-order sales?
Yeah, there we go.
Or
I
just
can never
pre-sales,
say his
yeah.
name. So what is Ta-Nehisi Coates? What is it? Ta-Nehisi Coates?
You actually were pretty close.
Yeah, the first time, Ta-Nehisi Coates is what I would say.
Okay. Everyone loves his Black Panther run. It was
Mm-hmm.
notorious. He made headlines. He was doing a great job.
Okay.
He announced a second one that he was going to work on, Black Panther in the World of Wakanda.
Okay.
As a part of the Marvel Now run, they were going to do another run with it.
Okay.
The book was canceled before it even got to issue 1. Because issue 1 didn't get enough pre-sale, supposedly.
Okay.
So that's the issue with that I think is the crux.
Yeah, you got it on the 2. Not bad.
The crux of the argument, though, is that model. God, what is wrong with me today?
I do not know.
It's bad.
Is the model of pre-ordering these kinds of books hurting it? Because this book didn't even get off the ground.
Right. And
Spider-Man Superior came out, and maybe the trade sales were crap at 6. They had already gone to 8, and they're like, just wrap it up now. Bring in Osborn and fight him.
Actually, before I want to throw this in here, it's not fully related to this, but I want to say it before I forget. Another problem with the trade sitting, because I remembered seeing a tweet about this, is currently the Comicsology Unlimited. If people wait until a book hits
it's
the
unlimited.
free,
Yeah.
the
You don't have to pay
Unlimited
for it.
doesn't actually support the writers, apparently.
Right. No,
None of it
yeah.
supports the books, the industry,
It's
or
literally
anything like
just
that.
for Comicsology.
And some people will not read a book and trade sit until it's on their free service.
Yep, or
And
on
then
the Marvel one.
Exactly. Like that's another thing that I
Wonder how
think
the
the
DC
Marvel
one
one.
works.
I think the Marvel one does actually support the industry though. Comicsology, I know, does not.
Well, that's a notorious problem with Comicsology in general, which is why there's a lot of people don't realize there's a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes with
Yeah.
Comicsology, Marvel, DC, Valiant, and all those others. Comicsology is the equivalent of a comic book shop where, I hate to say it, but comic book shops don't get much support from Marvel and DC, and the only support they give back is whatever posters they hang up. I mean, there's no... And that's what Comicsology is. It's just much bigger.
Right.
That's the issue.
But like
I mean,
that's another
realistically-
thing that I want to mention about the waiting, because waiting, reading, enjoying, regardless if you waited for the Comicsology Unlimited period or Marvel Now
Yeah.
or whatever it is, that's another thing that's hurting the industry, because people know that they can wait until the full thing is done.
Yeah, and that's the issue. What we're talking about here is waiting till it wraps up and not pre-ordering, and then companies doing things like canceling a Black Panther before it comes out in 2017.
Yeah.
You know, doing things like, Superior Spider-Man done at 12, or now are they all just trying out limited series with guaranteed endings?
See, to me, that would be the answer to that problem.
Because I feel like that's what the Black Label's pretty much doing.
Yeah, which
Yeah.
I mean, realistically, that is what it is. They're like, okay, we're doing 5 issues, 6 issues, whatever it is. Because I think half the books I get right now are Black Labels that don't involve superheroes.
Right.
Oddly enough, because they've started branching out into like Sword and
Joe Hill
Sorcery
stuff
and Joe Hill stuff, things like that. Like for instance, the Black Panther thing. To me, that more speaks to, because obviously the writer had done a great job on his previous Black Panther run. Everybody loved it, right? Like that. To me, that speaks more of like just the customer base doesn't want the comic. You know what I'm saying?
But see, that's
But we'll
the
never
problem,
know
though.
now.
Exactly.
I understand that,
exactly.
but let's say I come to you and I'm like, guys, I have a brilliant idea for a comic book, and I pitch it to you. I think it's amazing, and then everybody's like, I don't care. Like we don't. The book doesn't sound interesting, things like that. So why would a company waste the money on it? You know what I'm saying? If that makes any sense. On one hand, yes, it is an issue. I could see it being a problem if a book is really good. And people are like, I'm just going to wait for the trade paperback and then get it, and then it gets canceled. And then the customers are like, well, why did this get canceled? Why aren't there more trade paperbacks coming out? Well, that's your own fault because you waited for the trade paperback. I mean, it's a give and take kind of thing.
Right.
And
But if a book hasn't even come out and literally your entire customer base just goes, we don't care, why would Marvel waste the money? That I completely understand on Marvel's part.
Right.
If the customer base as a whole... Now, obviously, there were probably some people who were like, hell yeah, another Black Panther with the writer, whose name now I can't even remember. But, you know what I'm saying? Like, sure, that's great. But if the customer base as a whole, if 95% of your customer base is like, okay, don't care,
Right.
why would you waste money on it? I mean, that's just good business.
Well,
you know what I'm saying?
Exactly, but like the indie companies don't have as much privilege on a lot of that, and they don't have the pre-existing standing. Because like another thing to think about is like, while not many people might get into that, for all we know, if that had come out, it could have been one of those groundbreaking stories. Because I can't think of any off the top of my head, but I know there's stories that all of us have read where going into it, we're like, There's no way that this is going to
Tom
be
King's
good.
Batman.
Wrong.
But no, like
it does suck if there would have been this amazing thing we didn't get. But I mean, you also got to look at it. It's still business.
Exactly, but that being the business, the not going through with some of these stories is going to slowly hurt the industry, because it's like, well, crap. We can't start this new one. We can't start this new one. Now we're losing money on all these side ones. Now DC's like, oh crap. Okay, so we got Superman and Batman.
Right, and then eventually the customer base will complain that we're not getting anything original,
but not enough people are buying
but then
it.
People weren't buying what was original.
Right.
So it's like that endless cycle of like,
exactly.
I want original stuff, but I'm not purchasing it. Why do we don't have original stuff? But I'm, it's like, it's just an endless loop. Now, I will say when it comes to the indie books, especially Image, because I buy a lot of Image stuff.
Yes, you do.
Generally speaking, they do 5-issue runs.
Yeah, well, they
unless a book is doing really well,
or Robert Kirkman's writing it,
and they don't do like 1,000 runs. But generally, they're like, all right, you like when a creator comes to them, it's like you got 5 issues to tell your story. If it does well, we'll keep going with it. But if it doesn't do well, we're done, and then people will buy it and trade.
I know, for example, like Oblivion Song started up.
Yeah.
That was one of the ones I was going
to
mention.
It got to like issue 12 before anything happened.
Right. Well, exactly. It's Kirkman who like made Image for a while.
Right. I mean, like I remember reading it being like, there's so much cool ideas. Is anything gonna happen?
Yeah. I fell off because I was like,
but, I mean, that is a lot of the things Image does, because a lot of their stuff is creator owned. But generally speaking, they do 5-issue runs.
Right.
If it does well, they continue it. Most of the time, they don't usually go past. I think it's usually 10 to 12.
Right.
Unless it's like Robert Kirkman, and then it's like, oh, all right, we'll give you 1,000 issues. Who cares? You'll keep writing it.
Oh, you're Robert Kirkman? You just go to your board.
Just put a number on this piece of paper.
Yeah.
All right, we can do that.
He like comes to the office and says, guys, I have an idea. Perfect. We'll take 1,000 issues. We don't even care.
But it's only a 6-issue run. Oh, yeah. But
could you stretch it to 1,000? Is that cool?
Can you pull Tom King?
We can possibly put it on AMC. So
Oblivion Song's already gotten optioned as a movie.
Yeah, I know.
Is it really?
He had some other.
It's a
he
pretty
had some
good
other
story.
comic he's trying to get going. He hasn't even got the comic going. They've already optioned it as a movie.
Well, yeah, because Walking
Robert
Dead
Kirkman.
is huge.
Yeah. I'm still waiting.
Invincible's a cartoon.
I'm still waiting for my Invincible cartoon, which was announced like 4 years ago.
I know.
I
remember
haven't
that.
seen it. Yeah.
So the issue then comes down to this, and I want to talk more directly about the Tom King Batman situation and the Doomsday Clock situation with this after our commercial break. But
don't do the noise.
Don't do the noise?
No.
Okay. Well, the issue I want to bring up, and this is going to be that we're going to talk about Doomsday Clock and the Tom King Batman, and at this point, should we move away from floppies? But boing!
Not better.
Today's podcast is sponsored by Hims, a wellness brand for men. 66% of men start losing their hair by age 35. If you wait until your hair starts to thin, it might be too late. But with Hims, you can prevent this and keep your head full of hair. 4hims.com is the solution, being a one-stop shop for hair loss, skincare, and sexual wellness. With Hims, you can avoid those awkward doctor visits and save hours by going online to 4hims.com. It's super easy. Just answer a few questions and a doctor will review it and give you a prescription that gets shipped directly to your door. Try 4Hims today by starting out with a free online visit. Go to 4hims.com/Rob and Benny. That's FORHIMS.com/Rob and Benny. 4hims.com/Rob and Benny. Prescription products are subject to doctor approval and require an online consultation with a physician who will determine if a prescription is appropriate. See website for full details and safety information. This could cost hundreds if you went in person to the doctor's office or pharmacy. So remember, that's 4hims.com/Rob and Benny. So the question I had before the commercial break was, should comics move away from floppies in general? And I think they're testing that idea with Black Label because they're coming out as prestige books, 48 pages.
But still an individual.
Right.
Because they still come out like 4 or 5 issues.
But they're coming out every other month.
Yeah.
And they're coming out as like bigger books and they're increased price rate. And
well, they did that for a little while with their Earth Ones too, which kind of went away.
Yeah. Those definitely came out
Technically, they're
as
coming
little-
back. Jeff Johns said he's still working on Volume 3 of
I'm
Batman.
still waiting on Volume 3 of Batman, by the way. Last one came out, 8 years ago? I think around the same time as issue 1 of Doomsday Clock.
I'm
7
actually curious
decades
now.
ago.
It's 1945 and Doomsday Clock has begun.
He just starts
It's
saying it. He said
1963.
like
Doomsday Clock
number
2 just
came
arrived.
Start doing it like Dr. Manhattan. I like it.
Wait. It's
2016.
1972. I've moved the pencil 6 feet
actually not
away
too bad.
from Jeff Johns. Doomsday
Never
Clock
get Doomsday
3
Clock
got
number
delayed.
3. That's hilarious.
Doomsday Clock
dude.
number
That
4.
should be a Doomsday Clock parody we do.
I moved the pencil.
Well, no, because for a little while, Earth Ones were coming out. It was like Superman came out, and then Batman came out, and then I think it was.
But then we were
Titans.
getting Aquaman, Flash, and
Titans.
Green Lantern, and 5 years later, we got Green Lantern.
Yeah, and it's like, and then suddenly they just start. Now, whether that's like the writers or whatnot like that, but like to me, Earth One seemed like the original idea of what Black Label is turning into.
Did Earth
Yeah.
One sell well for the record?
Yeah. No, it did. It did.
I was gonna say, I
That's
really
why it's still
enjoyed them.
technically going.
Okay.
But it just seems like they suddenly got these weird. It was like, all right, I think it was supposed to be like every 6 months we're getting a different graphic novel,
Right.
And they're written as graphic novels. Like it wasn't like, oh, I'm gonna get Earth One Batman issue 1. It was volume 1,
Right.
volume 2.
I found Earth One books in their sales. It's just a total of like the best-selling
I
ones.
think
Yeah.
Without any
And a lot of them were
trackable data.
I really liked.
Hey, guess what?
a
It was
decent
Batman
amount.
and Superman.
Shocking.
Batman, Superman,
Batman, Superman, because they both had part
Teen
2.
Titans.
Teen Titans was 5. Wonder Woman was pretty
Wonder
good.
Woman
I like
was
that.
I
pretty
did.
good, yeah.
I actually enjoyed Green Lantern too. Actually,
I enjoyed the Teen Titans. That was one of my first.
So like, I could see them moving in a trade situation, and I think for certain books it would work really well. Like
Yeah.
Doomsday Clock to me seems like it should have been a trade.
Oh yeah,
Flat out.
100%.
Now, granted, that was also due to the fact that it had so many delays because Dr. Manhattan moved the pencil 6 inches away. But
That's going to be the reason now?
that'll be the
That's the
reason
new
from
reason.
now on. Yes.
Is that also why 3 Jokers is taking forever?
Yes. like 3 Jokers.
It's
3 Jokers should be a
1983.
trade.
I've tripped Jeff Johns. He can no longer write for another month.
It's just Dr. Manhattan screwing with Jeff Johns throughout time. I have given him a flat tire. He is 10 minutes late for work. Doomsday Clock will be delayed another 6 months. But to me, like certain things like Doomsday Clock, 3 Jokers probably to me would be an awesome trade paperback. Like if it came out that way. But then you would be like, okay, is it because everyone would be like, well, if it's supposed to be part of the universe, why is it in trade paperback? Why can't I get it as the individual issues?
Right.
So, I mean, yeah. I think certain stories would just work better.
Right.
If they flat out wrote it as a trade.
My argument is I completely agree.
It's an
And
excellent argument.
But that's the problem.
All right, moving on to our next topic.
No, that is the problem. Is it is such an investment to afford a trade paperback that if it comes down to it, we might lose different indie companies
We might
because they
lose
made
smaller characters, period.
We might lose
Yeah.
smaller
I mean,
characters,
honestly,
and that's
yeah.
going to dwindle the industry because
Yeah.
there are people that loved Gwenpool. Maybe it's not enough. Gwenpool's done. Now you've lost that entire base of people
Right.
for the comics. Whereas, like, if you kept going and they actually sold well as the single issues, because there are stories where it is a full arc, but each issue does tend to have at least a more or less conclusive little mini story.
Right.
That has an overall arc kind of thing. And like, those are the ones where if we move more towards people expecting the trade paperbacks, people might not give those ones the chance. And I think that's what will hurt the industry because the writers and the publishers that have the privilege and capability for waiting for the trade paperback
Right, yeah.
put into the readers' minds that they can wait for the trade paperback, but other publishers are like, no, we need to stay open. We need the lights on so we can print that next issue. But all these people are waiting for the trade paperback because so-and-so waited for the trade paperback and they think that's the norm. Because if you're coming into the comics when trade paperbacks are like the only thing, if you're a brand new reader, that's what you assume. You don't know anything.
I mean, I guarantee you there's some people out there that aren't aware and we've had this argument before in Absolute Comics about comic book stores and how hard they are to find and niche they are.
That's true.
And they're always in like the seedy part of town half the time.
There's all those Magic the Gathering kids.
But because of that, you only know what is being sold at Barnes & Noble.
Yeah.
And Barnes & Noble doesn't sell the singles. At least
That
ours
is
doesn't.
no,
Most-
they don't.
no,
yeah,
they-
most of them do not. They do. You can find the occasional one. Will have like some in the magazine racks.
But those are always the ones where it's like the mega version of that store.
exactly. Yeah. Generally speaking, it is
Which is
trade
why
paperbacks.
I felt the Walmart method was a good way because you're just trying to get more people aware that this even exists.
Yeah.
Because they didn't.
Because the other problem with waiting for the trade paperback is what we were saying earlier as well. Of sometimes it takes a month to get to that trade paperback as well.
Yeah.
And
DC
so it
is not
is
very
such
good about
a
getting theirs out quick.
yeah.
Unfortunately.
So the issue runs into at a point, and Dan just kept going forever.
I
Oh my
know.
God,
Sorry.
Dan.
Everyone knows I forget things very quickly, so I have to say them while I still.
And I know I
remember.
interrupted you because you do forget things very quickly, but now you made me forget my point that I was going for.
what were we talking about?
What's the topic today?
You excited for Star Wars later?
No. I'm just kidding. Of course I am.
So anyway, I'll just go to the next topic. I was
Oh,
moving on to.
actually, here's an idea with Star Wars. What if Star Wars first started and they waited until they had the full 3 trilogies and people waited until all 3 were out to fully watch them all?
Because there was actually no second or third movie at the beginning. Boom! Knowledge bomb.
That is true, actually.
But
You
see,
wrote all
and
that
that's
later.
the thing is
like after Star Wars already established.
You
Like, they
see
were
what I'm
like, yeah,
saying,
yeah.
though.
Well, I mean that's slightly different.
It's different on a bigger scale.
This is way off topic. Hold on. So, I also feel there's another problem with waiting for the trade paperbacks because we do have writers who write for trades. Ultimate
Yes.
Spider-Man by Brian Michael Bendis, in my opinion, is much better as a trade paperback format because if you read the individuals, oh my God, does it get boring at times?
Yeah.
I love the story. But
I
it
think the
gets boring.
first graphic novel of that, he doesn't even turn into Spider-Man until the last issue.
Yeah, and that's
Yeah,
like
yeah,
all
yeah.
6 issues
Yeah,
of
yeah,
that
yeah,
whole
yeah.
thing. So, Brian Michael Bendis is notorious for writing for trade, okay? And people like Tom King have quite obviously written Batman 85 issues all the way for trade because everything's big revealed.
One big trade. One big awful
Omnibus trade.
trade.
Be what?
I mean, it's going to be the Tom King Batman omnibus. But anyway,
Oh, it definitely is.
so because I know what Dan got started on this is
to balance my bookshelf.
his big question is people like Brian Michael Bendis, who have the freedom to do whatever they want, writing stories like Superman aimed for a trade, affecting the overall industry because indie books can't get their books out because they can't get you hooked because everyone's waiting for Brian Michael Bendis, who's kind of set a standard that the story's set up for 18 issues, which is what's going on right now. Does it also create problems where, because I thought about this recently,
Doubtful.
and I haven't brought it up till now. It's kind of not common knowledge, but it's almost rumor mill has speculated. Year of the Villain, the Justice League Fix, Heroes in Crisis are all to compensate for the fact that Doomsday Clock, which was supposed to affect the DC universe, got extended. So a lot of what happened in this last year
Extended, delayed. The term is delayed, not extended.
But because of that, a lot of what happened...
1983. I've hidden the rough draft to Doomsday Clock 4. Doomsday Clock is delayed.
in the rough draft.
But the idea is that a lot, and this is not confirmed by DC in any way, shape, or form. Could have very easily been a part of the plan, but people who read a lot of comics are speculating.
Jeff Johns was planning it that way. He's like, listen, guys, I'm going to be delayed as shit. So we're just going to add in a bunch of crap in the middle. Sound good?
The last year of DC has mostly been a stopgap to get us to the end of Doomsday Clock, where supposedly we might be getting a crisis or something soon.
In 2020, and then 2025, and then 2037.
I can't wait for
think.
Secret Crisis.
With Thor and Hulk
Thor and
versus
Hulk.
Superman.
Yeah. Let's go
What Brian Michael Bendis is known for writing for trade and the long form telling of his story.
Yes.
Apex Predator Lex Luthor is a white Martian that is 9 feet tall and commanding an army of other Martians.
Yes. Literally one of the most powerful people because Perpetua has imbued him with some of the most powerful abilities.
Right. The Lex Luthor in Superman 18 is a businessman with neck fat.
From the 90s.
He is.
No, 90s had red hair. Sorry.
My bad.
Yeah.
No,
Long-
that was 2000s. That was early 2000s. Wasn't
No,
it?
no.
That was 90s?
Death of Superman, 1993, I believe, 94 maybe. He
Okay.
had the long flowing red hair and the beard.
And then it
Because
counts
he was
with
supposed
a
to be his
Batman
own
mullet.
son. Yeah. Yeah, but
The
he
Superman
wasn't.
mullet, my bad. Anyway,
The super mullet.
Super mullet.
Bendis writing for trade may be why Lex Luthor is an old businessman in his book, because when he wrote these stories, Apex Predator wasn't a thing.
Yeah.
There was no white Martian Lex that he had to worry about. Instead, we had Lex.
Yeah.
So, is writing for trade hurting even the company's ability to turn and change the stories as needed? What do you think? Am I theorizing too much here? Or is it just Bendis going, I don't like Apex
I think it's
Predator.
just Bendis, honestly.
I think
Just
it is
going,
a little bit
I don't like
Bendis.
Apex Predator. He's normal Lex still.
Yeah, I was gonna say, because then they could, because they do that sometimes where they'll say it like, this takes place after the events of, or DC will come out and be like, oh yeah, well Bendis' run actually technically takes place after the events of Scott Snyder's
Right.
Justice League.
Or before or whatever.
Because they did that with Scott Snyder's Batman all the time. They were like, well, technically this takes place before that event or after
Right.
this event,
Right.
which is why they don't reference any of that in this event.
Right.
Yeah.
Because like they did that with during the Deathstroke versus Batman arc. They were like, by
Right.
the way, here's a little box. This happened a while ago, guys.
Yeah. Honestly, timeline in comics nowadays are very fluid about when people.
No, they are.
tend
I'm
to
just
do
wondering
it.
if do you think that maybe him writing for trades, because he does, and that's fine. We all expect that from Bendis.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, when his Superman came out, I read issue 1 and went, all right, and at issue 6, I'll read them all.
See, honestly, I think the best
And I
way to
won't.
do it is you can have your standard issues, your single issues, right, which tell whatever standard continuity is. But I think trades are a good way for writers to tell a story without having to worry about what the hell's going on in Justice League right now. So I think certain things, like I said, just work better in trade. So if they were like, Bendis, we're going to give you screw it, just do whatever the hell you want, and
Right.
we'll call it good for the trade or whatever like that. Because then you don't have to worry like, okay,
Well, yeah,
why is White
Just
Martin?
pick a
why is
number.
Lex-
We'll say it's on that Earth.
Exactly. It's like, I mean, realistically, which was the point of like Earth One or Black Label is like they
Right.
could just tell a story. You don't have to worry about what the hell is going on in Batman and Superman and yada yada
Right.
yada.
So does
Just tell
trade
us-
city
well,
cause
that's-
problems with continuity?
I was gonna say that sounds more like a continuity might be
But-
the problem. In
But
comics.
no, to me, like, okay, saying that they're going to write it for the trade, for
Right.
a trade, or whatever like that, like Black Label.
Yeah.
Okay, they're like, Black Label, we don't care. Tell whatever story you want to tell. It doesn't matter what the continuity is. Like, to me, that would work better if they were like, Brian Michael
if
Bendis,
they
just
specifically
write it this
said
way.
it,
Yeah, exactly.
then yes, I could see that
Yeah.
being a better situation because people at least would be
That's
aware,
what I'm saying, yeah.
as well as being aware in the opposite of, oh, they said this wasn't going to be a trade. I
Right.
know that I should be getting this in single issues. To
So I feel
support.
like maybe there should be like two different
that.
continuity.
I think that
guess,
could be.
Which is what Black Label
which
and
is
DC.
what Black
Yeah.
Label is supposed to be. Yeah.
I could see that helping.
Because to me, that's one of the biggest problem with the mainstream comics is the constant circular storytelling where it's like you have to worry about the continuity, and in a year this won't matter anyway because we're gonna have a crisis event and it's gonna revert everything anyway.
Right.
And you know what I'm saying? Like,
I mean, that's what everyone's saying right now. They're like, oh, so the Justice League thing won't matter. The Alfred thing won't matter.
No.
The Superman reveal won't matter. Like,
No.
I literally have people asking me.
they've already said the new crisis is coming, and
Yeah.
whenever there's a new crisis, it literally reverts
what doesn't work.
everything. Yeah. Or cuts
And it's
cuts
literally
away what
going to
doesn't
be
work,
happening
everything.
next year because
Yeah.
Doomsday Clock specifically says in 2020 that is the next crisis.
Yeah.
And I think
then
that was
leading
essentially
into
Jeff
5G.
Johns going, "Are my bad guys?
Yeah.
Let's have another crisis. I won't do this again, I promise." Also,
Like, he's
3
even-
Jokers is going to be in like a year or two. But
I mean, you could have that right before the crisis, and
is
then the
the
crisis will
crisis.
make it moot.
it's Identity Crisis. Which Joker is it? And that somehow resets
I would
things.
read that. Yeah.
So, I feel like we've gone around 1,000 circles, 1,000 discussions here.
I think I will conclude my
This
argument.
this argument would have worked better in trade. Huh?
I think my
See what I did?
I will conclude my argument with the closing statement of I think trade sitting is usually fine when it comes to DC and Marvel, but I think trade sitting is hurting the indie companies and potentially the ability for more ideas and expanding upon the comic book industry. That's my closing statement on the argument.
Okay. I don't think trade sitting is bad. I think the comic book industry needs to adapt in general to get those singles in hands. Because if trades are so easy to get, why can't we make the floppies easier? Mm-hmm. Because if we've moved floppies to comic book stores and Walmart and the occasional rack at your 7-Eleven, we need to get them in more locations.
What is this, the 90s? None of those things exist anymore.
A comic book store doesn't exist?
Well, I meant 7-Eleven. And comic book racks in them.
I have never seen
Remember
it.
back in the grocery
Is
store?
this
we'd
the
go to
1940s?
The comics in the grocery store I remember because that's where I saw that there was a Futurama comic.
I remember going to the grocery store and you'd go over there and it'd be like,
There'd be like 6.
lifestyle,
Yeah.
whatever, and then like tucked in the back
Yeah.
corner.
And then there were always the nudie magazines in the top row.
Sure.
Where you can range. Sealed
Boost
black
each other
bag.
No, grab jugs.
I feel like they need to figure out a way to get the floppies out there or stop using them as the only metric. If they've started using...
That's probably better,
And
yeah.
it could be. And bear in mind, we don't work in their marketing. They figured out ways to start tracking trades and merchandise and everything better.
Yeah.
Because we have seen some changes over the years. But I feel like these changes are coming very slow.
Yeah.
The industry is known for tracking pre-sales and things like that as the way to know if a book is going to sell. If they have made changes, they're very slow, very minor, and you're only seeing them occasionally, like things like maybe Superior Spider-Man did get 6 issues. They did wait for the trade. They were like, if we'll wait and see what the trade sitters are doing.
Right.
That may have been the case, but we don't fully know. The industry in general, in my opinion, there's just a lot of problems that are inherent with it not adapting in the last 30 years.
Yeah.
I love comics. I love the way they do things. But I feel like we need a giant shakeup like how Image did so that creators get their proper due for creating characters and stuff like that. But now we need it on the marketing and distribution. We need that kind of a shakeup. We need the Image shakeup on marketing and distribution. That's what I feel. What do you think?
I would say, well, I agree that, yes, they need to figure out better ways to track things and things like that. I also think, especially with the 2 big companies, the other inherent problem is, and this is kind of my ending for this argument, is that they need to worry less about having these endless ongoing series and telling good stories.
Yeah.
And that's why I like Black Label. I like what Black Label is doing.
I honestly like if a series is, if they're like, okay, we're pushing for 60 issues, right? This is gonna run for like 5-6 years, but the story is not good because you're planning on this giant thing. I mean, you can't blame people for not buying it.
Yeah.
Honestly. Like, and if you're like, listen, I got a great 5-issue Spider-Man story that possibly we could do more with, because then I could have another 5-issue Spider-Man story. Like that needs to be, you need to worry about telling good stories that actually draw people in, not just like, yeah, we got a new Thor story and it's kind of the same as all the other Thor stories. I don't know why people aren't buying it.
Right.
You know what
Well,
I'm saying?
it's kind of the argument I had with Tom King. As much as you don't like the run, when they announced that it was getting cut from 100 to 85, that was at like 70 something. And I was like, at this point, just finish it. You've agreed to the whole run at this point. Now you're going to cut it early. It's going to get a lot of flack because it's getting cut early. Just finish it. Why did you agree to 100 issues?
Yeah, but I said good
Well,
stories.
actually,
so.
one thing also I do want to mention about the Tom King thing, it's very similar to the Brian Michael Bendis Superman. He also started this when Doomsday Clock was supposed to be a year.
That's true. Yeah.
Because
We
for
don't
all
know what
we
it
know,
changed.
like what's happened up to
It could've
85
been- yeah, it
could have
could've-
been up to 50.
Right.
And he had planned to
He
go
had to
further.
adjust,
Because
yeah.
that's another one that I don't think we've ever actually brought up in a discussion with the Tom King story. We always just say, well, Tom King likes to stretch it out a little too much. But yeah,
Maybe he
for all we
had
know,
to.
exactly.
Yeah,
maybe he
yeah.
had to, and he didn't have
Maybe
the
that's why
privilege
Nightmare
of.
was 10 issues.
Yeah, it's
Exactly.
He's like, guys, I only got like 3 of these. They're like, no, we need 10. All right, Batman. Bruce doesn't like it that Selina's gonna have a life outside of him. Then,
Yeah.
That creepy
But-
kid Bruce Wayne that I made for a fun annual
Yeah.
sequel.
yeah, that one's back too.
Right.
So like, we love it. It's cool.
Oh.
We don't even care.
Wow, we went through a full hour
That's
before
pretty
that
good,
fell
yeah,
off.
that's pretty good.
First, I just that popped into my head, and I wanted to throw that out there because
it's all good points.
Yeah.
All right, well, I guess that's the end of today's episode. What do you guys think in the industry? Down below, let me know. What do you guys think about this topic in general? About floppies versus trades versus merchandising versus how is this all getting out there? A lot of people like to state that the movies, as long as they exist, will sustain the entire industry, and there's a chance for that.
That's actually
but
fair.
They need to have more of a crossover. We've had that argument multiple times. You never see the movies actually talk about the comics, or anything like that. Either way. Don't forget, you can support us by watching the show live on twitch.tv/Comicstorian on Thursdays at about 2 p.m. Eastern. You can catch it not live, but you can catch it on our YouTube channel on Saturday mornings, and you can catch it on Google Play, Spotify, iTunes, and our Patreon, patreon.com/Comicstorian. Don't forget to check out our 2 sponsors, Mint Mobile and Thor Hims. I gave you the sexual wellness one.
Nice.
You need it.
He needs phones. You need.
I do. I got phones for days. Thanks, Ryan. Tweet me.
You're not on a first name basis with him.
I want him to tweet me now.
We will call him Mr. Reynolds.
Mr. Reynolds.
Mr. Pool.
There you go.
Can you?
First name dead.
Also, will you send me some of your aviation?
Oh yeah, it's good gin.
Just saying.
Anyway, guys, thank you so much for your support. We really do appreciate it. I hope you guys have a great holiday.
Yeah. I don't know what you were expecting from me.
I
Happy
agree.
holidays.
Oh, happy holidays, everybody.
How was that one hard to guess?
Because you were just like, I hope you have a great holiday. I agree. I also hope you have a good. Well, I don't. Bah,
I
humbug.
concur. Happy holidays to all.
And we'll see you guys in the new year with the next episode of Comics Experiment. Thank you.